Hello, I'm Wendy and welcome to my channel where I share crochet tutorial videos for my projects and techniques. And today is all about the rectangular granny square. But just before we start, if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe and click that little notification bell so you get notified when my new videos come out. And also any links that I'm referring to will be in the description notes below. So today I'm going to show you how to make a rectangular granny shaped blanket which isn't too long, so it makes an ideal shape to create a baby blanket, a lap blanket or a pet blanket. This finished one here measures about 18 inches wide by about 23 inches long at the moment, and in next week's tutorial I'm working on a 3-inch border for it, and that's a multicolored border, so that will be coming next week. So all in all it's going to end up about 24 inches wide by about 29 inches long, and again the measurements in centimeters are here. So what I'm going to do now is run through the materials, and then we're going to make the first 4 rounds to set the granny rectangle pattern in place for you, and then if you come through with me till the end I'll run through 3 different other size options and yarn quantities so you can adapt this blanket to your own specific size. So to make this one I used a Sirdar Pattercake yarn cake, and here is my label here, and it was shade 751, and I used that simply so that I had no joins and I was just starting from one central colour, and I just used it until I ran out. But you could also use just a couple of balls of normal double knitting yarn, so you would need 200 grams if you're buying 100-gram balls. So for the purpose of the video today I'm going to be using some Stylecraft Special DK, and I've got a 4mm hook to hand too, and that is all that we need to get going. So now we're just going to get straight in and start making this rectangle. This is the right-handed video, so if you're left-handed I'll put a link in above here now and in the description notes below to take you to the left-handed video. We're going to start by making this central panel, and that's going to set the actual size of the rectangular motif that we're making. And it consists of 5 sets of 3 trebles, which you can see as I put my fingers through them here. Okay, and then either end there is a 5 chain space. So the first thing that I'm going to do is make a slip knot and make 23 chain. Now I want to make sure that I make the 23 chain loosely because I'm going to be crocheting back into that foundation chain for the first row. So I'm going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 and 23. So now when I work round 1 I want to make sure that I leave 5 spare chain at the end. So I've got my little slip knot here, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to leave that 5 chain spare, and I need to make sure that I work my last stitch into the 6th chain from the beginning. So for the purposes of today, this video, I'm going to pop a little marker in. I'm going to pop just a spare piece of thread in a different colour so that that just highlights it for you and you can see it more clearly. So we miss this little slip knot, and we miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this will be where we end row 1, and that's crucial. So now I'm going to miss the 5 chain underneath my hook as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to make 3 UK trebles in the 6th chain underneath the hook. So I'm just working into the side of the chain, and I've made 1 treble, 2 trebles and 3 trebles. Okay, So now I'm going to miss 2 chain, and in the 3rd chain along I'm going to make another 3 trebles. So that's my first one, and my second, and my third, and I now have 2 groups of 3 trebles. There's no chain space between them. I'm just literally working one set of 3 trebles after the other. So I'm going to miss 2 chain again, so that's 1, 2, and in the 3rd chain I'm going to work another set of 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's given us our 3 sets so far. So we've got 2 more to make. So we miss again 1, 2 chains, and into the 3rd chain we're going to make our 4th set of trebles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we've now just got 1 set of trebles left to make. So we're going to miss the next 2 chain, 1, 2, and in that 3rd chain where we've got our stitch marker, I can now take that out and make my last set of 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So I'm now simply going to make a slip stitch into the very first chain after the slip knot, and that will create the loop at the other end. Okay, so if I hold that out now, we've now got 5 sets of 3 trebles, and we've got a 5 chain space loop at either end. So in these loops at either end, we're going to make 3 sides of a granny square now. So we're now starting round 2. So we're going to make 3 chain to represent our first treble stitch. And so I want to make 2 more trebles to make my first set of 3 stitches. Okay, so now I want to make a corner, and for that I'm going to make 2 chain. And now I'm going to make another set of 3 trebles to make another side of my 3 corners of my granny. That's 3 trebles made. And I'm going to make another 2 chain, and that will turn the corner. And I've got 3 trebles left to make the 3rd side of the granny shape. So now it looks a little bit strange, but what we've got is we've got the first row that we made is now upside down, but that's actually making the 4th side of the granny shape. And then we've got 1, 2, 3 sides, and we've got 2 chain spaces creating the corners between. So now we're going to be working in the gaps here between the 3 trebles. So we're simply going to be working a group of 3 trebles in between all the way to the end. So that's 1 and 2 and 3. And now we're going to jump to the gap between the next 2 sets of 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and again we're going to jump to the gap between the next 2 sets of 3 trebles. So it's 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and then we've got one last set, so I'm going to work between the next 2 sets of trebles in the gap. So that's my 3rd treble. So when we look at it now, we can see that we've got the 3 sides of our granny square here, and then the 4th side is elongated, and including this first set here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now we've got back to the 5 chain space at the other end, so we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to make 3 sets of 3 trebles in there, and we're going to put 2 chains in for each of the 2 corners. So I'm going to work my first set of 3 trebles in that end chain space. So this is the second, and this is the 3rd treble. So that's one group made, and now I'm going to make a corner, so I'm going to make 2 chains. Now I'm going to make the next side, so I'm going to make 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. And now I'm going to make my next corner, so that's 2 chains, and I'm going to make my last set of 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. So when we look at this 5 chain space that we had at the side, you can see now that we had 3 trebles, 2 chains, 3 trebles, 2 chains and 3 trebles. So now I'm just going to work all the way along, again working in the gaps between the sets of 3 trebles, and I'm just going to make a set of 3 trebles in each gap. So here we go, I've skipped the first 3 trebles, and in this gap I'm going to work 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Then I'm going to go to the next gap between the next 2 sets of 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. So again, I'm going on to the next gap between the next set of 3 trebles. That's 1, 2 and 3. And then again to the next gap between the sets of 3 trebles. That's 1, 2 and 3. And now we're back to the beginning of the round where I made the 3 chain that represented that first stitch of the round. So I'm just going to join it with a slip stitch to the top of the 3 chain. So that's just the same as if you were making a normal granny square. So if we have a look at it, I can put my fingers in the corner and pull it into shape. So we've now got our 4 corners, and it looks like a narrow strip, but it will gain its proportions as it gets a little bit bigger. So we now want to get our working yarn here across to the corner space. So just the same as the way that I make a plain granny, I'm going to slip stitch into the top of the next 2 stitches and the chain space to move my yarn over to the corner. So I'm just going to make one slip stitch, another slip stitch, and that's into the last treble stitch, and then I'm going to make one more slip stitch into the corner space. And now I'm in the perfect position to start round 3. So for round 3, and for every other round, the first stitch of the row will consist of making 3 chain, and that's going to stand up and represent that first treble stitch, and that will have moved our working yarn from the bottom of the round to the top of the round. So now I need to make 2 more trebles. And that's the second one, and that is our first set of 3 stitches made. So as I'm at a corner, I'm going to make 2 chain. That will turn the corner for us and create the corner space, and I'm going to make 3 more trebles in the same space. And this is my third. So now we're going to jump across. You'll note we're not making any chains between the sets of 3 trebles apart from the corner spaces where we're going to be making 2 chains. So I'm going to make my first set of 3 trebles in the next corner. So this is my second and my third. And as I'm at a corner space, I'm going to make 2 chain, and then I'm going to make my next set of 3 trebles. So that's my first, my second, and my third. Okay, so now we can see that we've got our 2 corners appearing here. So now I'm going to work all the way along this straight edge, and I'm going to be working between each set of 3 trebles, so I can pop my fingers between them so that you can see the gaps. And all I'm going to be doing is working 3 trebles into each gap. So that's my first, second, and third. So that's one done. Jump to the next gap. First, second, and third. Okay, so jump to the next gap between the sets of 3 trebles, and that's my first, my second, and my third, and then jump to the next gap. And again, first treble, second treble, and third, and then I've got one more gap. So between these 2 sets of 3 trebles, I'm going to work 3 UK trebles. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And so I've now reached the next corner area. So I've got a corner here and a corner here. So in this corner space, I'm going to make 3 trebles, 2 chain, and 3 trebles. So that's my first, my second, and my third. Now I can make 2 chain. And then in the same space, I'm going to make my next set of 3 trebles, and that will have turned the corner. And that's my third. So that's my corner made. And then I'm going across to the next corner now. So it's 3 trebles, 2 chain, and 3 trebles. So that's my second treble and my third treble. So now I'm going to make 2 chain. That will turn the corner. And then 3 trebles again. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So now we've got this straight edge again, and we're going to work all the way back to the beginning of the round, making sets of 3 trebles in the gaps between each cluster from the row below. Now when I say a cluster, I'm talking about the groups of 3 trebles, and that's the only stitch that you're going to be making for the rest of your granny rectangle. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then into the next gap again, 1, 2, and 3, and then to the next gap, 1, 2, and 3, and then to the next gap, 1, 2, and 3. And then we've got our last gap here between the last 2 sets of 3 trebles. That's my second, and that's my third. And then again, I can join it to the top of the 3 chain that I made at the beginning of the round with a slip stitch. So now if I pop my fingers in the 4 corners, you can see the shape now is beginning to take place. And you can see where I started with my foundation chain, and I worked 5 sets of 3 trebles along that first row. Then after that we started working rounds, and you can see now that we have these corner spaces that've got 2 chains in them, and when you're at a corner space you're always making 3 trebles, 2 chain, 3 trebles. Okay, and then when you're working along the flat edge, along the straight edge, you are literally just working 3 trebles and then jumping to the next gap from the row below and making another 3 trebles, and you're going to be repeating this for the whole time. So I'm just going to start one more round so that you can see it beginning to take place. So I'm going to slip stitch across to that corner space to take my working yarn to the right point to start the next round. So I've done that. Now I'm going to make 3 chain to represent that first stitch. So that's the 3rd chain, and it's moved my working yarn from the bottom of the stitch to the top of the stitch, and I'm going to make 2 more trebles. Okay, now I'm going to turn the corner, so that's 1, 2, and then I'm going to make 3 more trebles in the same place, and that will have made my corner section. That's my second, and that's my third. Okay, so now I've got a flat edge, so I'm just going to jump straight across to the gap between the sets of 3 trebles in the round below and make 1 set of 3 trebles. Now we're at the next corner, so I'm going to make 3 trebles, 2 chain, 3 trebles, and that will turn our corner. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's our first set made. We're going to make 2 chain, and then we're going to make our next set of 3 trebles. And that's my 3 trebles made, and we've turned the corner. Now I'm going to work all the way along the edge again till I get to the next corner, just working sets of 3 trebles between the sets from the round below. So I'm going to meet you at the next corner so that we can work that section. So I'm now back at my next corner space. So I'm going to be working 3 trebles, 2 chain and 3 trebles again to turn the corner. So that's my 3 trebles made, 2 chain and 3 more trebles. And then we've got a straight edge to work across with a gap between the 2 sets of trebles from the round below. So I'm just going to work 3 trebles again. And then we're back to the last corner. So yes, again, it is 3 trebles and 2 chain and 3 trebles. So this is my second and my third treble, and then 2 chain, and then my next set of 3 trebles turning that corner. So we're back again to a straight edge. So I'm just going to work this final straight edge and join it up so you can see how it's really taking shape now. So here I am back at the beginning of the round again. So again, I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the 3rd chain that I made at the beginning of the round that represented my first stitch. And there we have it, our rectangle is taking place, and you can see now that it really has turned into a rectangular shape. And as I said at the end of the round below, you will find that as it gets bigger, the proportions change slightly, so it will seem wider and it will work into a nice size for a small baby's blanket. So from now on, every round will be exactly the same. In the corner spaces, you're going to be working 3 trebles, 2 chain, 3 trebles. And then for the straight edges, you're quite simply just working 3 trebles all the way along in each of the gaps between the sets of trebles from the round below. So now we've set the pattern in place for your rectangular granny, it's up to you how big you're going to make it. So to just run through some sizes for you, the one that we did today, that was coming out with a 18 to a 23 inch granny square. Again, I'm putting the sizes in centimetres on the screen for you as well. And that took one 150 gram ball of Sirdar Pattercake. And if you were using a regular UK double knitting yarn, you'd want 2 100 gram balls. But however, if you want to make a size going up to approximately 24 inches by 30 inches, you would need to have 2 150 gram Pattercake balls, or you would need 3 100 gram balls of yarn. And if you wanted to make an even bigger rectangular granny and you wanted it to be up to 38 inches by 44 inches, you would then need 4 Sirdar Pattercake yarn cakes, or you would need to have 6 separate 100 grams of UK double knitting yarn. So don't forget to tune in for next week's tutorial, where I'm going to take you through the lovely multicoloured 3-inch border, which will work on any size of the granny rectangle blanket that you're making. And if you haven't already subscribed, then subscribe and click that notification bell, and you'll get notified of when the video is going live. So thanks for watching, happy crocheting, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye!